What's up, you guys, and welcome back to the Televised Podcast. My name is Anna, and today we're going to be talking about Batwoman 210 as well as Supergirl 603. It was a great, genuinely such a good week for DCTV, specifically for both of our heroes that used to be SuperBat Sunday. Obviously are now airing on different days, but there's still a connection there for me. Genuinely such good episodes this week. I don't know, they're just such good character moments for each episode, and especially for the Batwoman episode, lots of like really poignant topics that they talked about. And again, I mean, that's something that I've talked about before, where Supergirl kind of feels like they fumble on those points, but Batwoman always really hits it out of the park. And I think that this episode was a prime example of that, of them just like hitting it out of the park with incorporating political topics into their episodes, and how just like they can relate these characters to our real world because they are so grounded, and because these characters feel so real and are so relatable. And every damn time I just need to applaud them for that. So obviously this episode of my podcast would be literally probably like 2.5 hours long if I did an in-depth Batwoman review as well as the Supergirl one. So I just kind of want to talk like not vaguely, but like generally about the Batwoman episode without really going like minute by minute like I normally do. So in this episode, I know that I have discussed before how divided Batwoman fans are about Angelique, but I really like her. Like, obviously her sacrifice at the end of the last episode of episode 9 really like cemented her as someone that I think has so much room for change and has so much room for growth, and I'm really excited to see that. And especially now that at the end of this episode she is out of prison, but she was kidnapped by the False Face Society, and that is genuinely so scary. And I don't know, I'm excited to see how her storyline plays out, but I really like her character. I don't know, I think Ryan and Angelique represent different experiences and different outcomes, I guess, of growing up in the system and kind of being these high-risk kids. And I think that was really interesting to see this episode, especially being focused on the prison system and high-risk kids, and how important like community centers are, and how important it is to make sure that these kids are allowed a proper like development and proper growth and a proper childhood, by allowing these community centers to help raise them so that they don't end up on the streets. I think it's so interesting that Ryan and Angelique represent such different parts of that experience, but they both also prove that you can have a childhood where you don't have these community outreach centers, and you instead have the system that you just get thrown into and you get eaten alive, but you still can like make something of yourself and move beyond that and have a good life, create a good life for yourself. You know what I mean? Like Ryan, obviously she talked about this in the last episode that I thought was really a really special moment for her, where she was like, we need to be somebody's intervention moment. Not necessarily intervention, but like she says, Batwoman, changed my life and turned my entire life around, and now I have a job and I do good for the city, and I have the parole board, off my back, and I can move forward with my life. I'm no longer a high-risk person in a high-risk situation. And we need to be that for other people. And that's why her and Mary and Sophie's sister Jordan, that's why they all create this community outreach center in the first place. But I also think Ryan is that person for Angelique as well. She's the one who's pushing her and giving her the space and helping her, giving her the tools to, have this intervention, for lack of a better term, kind of moment. And I love that. I think that this storyline is really cool. And I mean, at the beginning of the season, I kind of like hypothesized like Ryan and having ultimately to leave Angelique behind in order to grow. But I think it's also a really great storyline to have her not leave Angelique behind to grow, but for them to grow together and to be able to move past this, because it says such a cool thing about kids who are survivors of basically, I mean, like childhood mistreatment, I mean, that's the best term that I could think of for it. You know what I mean? Like, for these kids, that's what it is. They're treated really terribly, as the show has made a great point out of, because it's all so true, and I mean, God, this episode, the way that they created a villain out of people who are actually villains in our real world, you know what I mean? Like, they had this duality in this episode where Black Mask, yes, he's this like horrible, scary, creepy comic book, absolutely comic book villain, you know what I mean? Like a fantastical villain who feels larger than life and feels other and out of the ordinary for our own world. But then they had in this same episode another villain who is someone that I think we could all, in the prison system in our own communities, we could find somebody like this villain, this CEO of Edgewater Prisons. I can't remember his name. We could have that person and find them in real life. We could find 1 million of them in real life. Like, oh my God. And I loved that contrast between those two villains where, and I mean, same thing with Enigma, even though we kind of got a demystifying version of Enigma this episode, she's still kind of like larger than life and has these like outlandish powers and abilities to change people. I mean, God, she made Julia transfer to Berlin. That is crazy. And then, like I said, for them to have this other villain that is in charge of both the press and the prison, it's like, God, that feels grounded and real. And it was a really cool balance to strike between the two genres that they're kind of playing in here, the superhero genre, but also just kind of like the drama, like it's not like a crime drama, but it kind of is, like, in that way where we can find real connections in our own lives between that villain and people in our own communities. And it was really good. I just loved that. I thought that was so cool for them to do that. And I mean, God, this episode was so good. And oh my God, there's so much to talk about in this episode. But like, I mean, okay, Alice and Julia, they were such a great pair. Such a great pair. They just kept flirting. And I'm like, listen, if you're going to keep having women flirt with Alice and she kind of like flirts back in her own weird way, let's go there with Alice. I know that Caroline has said that she's not bi, but girl, come on. Just do it, just for the hell of it, just pull the trigger on Alice. I think we need to, on bi Alice. Especially after all those scenes with Julia. That was literally crazy. Julia was flirting with Alice so hard in a way that you flirt with your enemy, but like, that's the dynamic. That's the enemies to lovers dynamic. And I don't know if it's necessarily with Julia who I would want that with. I mean, I talked about like Sophus before, or Alice and Ryan before. I don't know, there's so many possibilities for Alice, but I need that in my life. And then what else was so good in this episode? Oh, okay. You can't, apparently, and you know what? You can't have a drug storyline on your show without one of your main characters getting addicted to it. When Jacob, I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, yeah. Just one of those things where if there's a drug storyline on your show, you know, one of your main characters is gonna have to get an addiction to it. It's very Dr. Spencer Reed, very, you know, all of those kinds of storylines that we see. But I did really enjoy how it kind of gave Jacob an opportunity to be humanized a little bit because I just don't like him. I just don't. I don't like him. So I liked that it kind of, because, Enigma said the whole reason that people get addicted to snakebite is because it gives them the chance to undo one of their, like, cardinal sins, or, you know, that they would like to do over, you know, and I liked that it was him saving Beth, and that was what he was trying to do over again, is his biggest regret. That was great way to try to humanize Jacob, but I still just can't stand him. Oh man, yeah. What else in this? Oh shit! And then Luke in this episode was so good. He took one of those electric shotgun things and went and like shot all the bad guys, and I was like, holy shit. And I know that Cameras said in an interview that he doesn't think that necessarily is the Luke to Batwing pipeline, that like immediate pipeline, but I would like to think that it is. I need to see him do that. I know that right now, obviously he's the tech guy and he's needed in the Batcave so badly, but I need Batwing on the show. I need that just as badly. Because, I mean, God, he looked so cool and he was so good in the field. And I love that Ryan was like, oh my God, you've been holding out on me. What are you doing? I just love that. I thought it was so cool. It was kind of it was a very like Lena Luthor moment, like where she, like, any of the times that she's like, when she shot the guy who was about to kill Alex, like that's, you know, it had that same vibes of like, the tech person, like, totally killing it, like, in the field, like, doing the damn thing. And I loved it. It was so good. And I mean, same thing about, I feel the same way about Luke as Batwing as I do about Alice Redemption, that I think that it's a bit early in the series for it, like, so I'm not getting my hopes up by any means, but it is something that I want, hopefully. In the future, it is something that we could see on screen. And then there was one more other thing that I wanted to talk about. Oh, last thing that I wanted to talk about was there was so many shots of Chicago in this episode, and this is so nerdy, but I just love to see Gotham as Chicago. Or Chicago as Gotham. I just like to see all the shots because I'm like, I walk there all the time. Because I'm up there for school all the time. So it's just really fun to like see. And I hope that once the world is back to normal and we can exist, you know, outside of COVID, I hope that once everything is, you know, as per usual, I hope that the cast comes back to Chicago, because they filmed for season 1 in Chicago. They filmed a couple like outdoor scenes, and I would just love to see them come back they filmed a couple outdoor scenes with the cast. They've since done that with like crews here in Chicago, but for like the main cast, they haven't been back since like one of the first couple episodes of season 1, and I just would love it if they would come back and do like a little, you know, some little like outdoorsy shoots, just because I'd love to see it. And I'd love to go to the set. I'd love that. Go like hang out like all the people who live in Vancouver get to do all the goddamn time. So that's just me personally. I just want that. But yeah, so Genuinely though, great episode about women. I am really excited for the next episode. Oh shit, it was Enigma that I wanted to talk about. That was it. The demystifying of Enigma was really interesting in this episode. I was like, oh shit, it's not, she doesn't have like magical powers. I don't know, for me, or for whatever reason, I was thinking like magical powers, but she just has like her cane that she then injects something into her victims. Thought that was very interesting. And I wonder, like, because Sophie definitely seemed weirded out by Julia's like split decision to move to Berlin. I wonder if Sophie will eventually kind of start to catch on, and I wonder if they could like trace whatever that was, like if they ran like tests on like Alice's blood, because they know that, or at least Alice knows that Enigma did her thing on Alice. I mean, if they tested Alice and then they tested Julia, like, would they find, that a chemical in there that would allow them to like trace, not necessarily trace, but like to see, like to have tangible proof that like these memories were altered and these people were changed. And I wonder if Sophie will be on the ball with that. And she had a really good little storyline this episode about freeing Angelique and that kind of thing. So that was, good for Sophie, but I'm excited for the next episode. She is working with Ryan in the next episode, so really thrilled about that. And yeah, so yeah, that was such a good episode of Batwoman. If you're not watching Batwoman, you have to watch Batwoman. I know that a lot of people listen to my podcast because they love Supergirl, but if you're not watching Batwoman, you have to watch Batwoman. It is so good. It is the best DCTV show. It literally is. It's one of the best shows on the CW, if not the best, because Nancy Drew is I mean, I'm liking it, but they're doing some things that I'm like, okay. So right now, Batwoman is inching out Nancy Drew as my favorite CW show. Well, and then, I mean, Supergirl's in there as well, but in terms of quality, it's like, it's right now it's Batwoman and then it's Nancy Drew. But anyway, yeah, so, like, I mean, come on, it'll be on tomorrow. By the time you're listening to this, it'll be on tomorrow, so please, just give it a chance, just give it a watch. And pretty soon, Kate Kane will be back. She wasn't in this episode. I was like, oh man, she's not in this episode, but that's okay. I think officially, Wallace Day is going to be in episode 12, and I think that's the first time that we will be seeing her on our screens. So I'm so excited about that. And yeah, so anyway, that is the end of Batwoman spoilers, Batwoman discussion. And I guess let's talk about Supergirl. Genuinely, for me, this is one of my favorite episodes of Supergirl, maybe of all time. It's not my favorite episode of all time, but it's up there with some of my favorite episodes. It's one of my favorite episodes, especially in recent memory, like within the past couple of seasons. It was a really, really good episode, I think. I mean, it touched on, I mean, like I talked about in the premiere, and with the finale of season 5, it did all the things in terms of like creating these character interactions, kind of taking a page out of Legends of Tomorrow's book by splitting off the characters, because that's just what you have to do when you have an ensemble show. You have to split the characters off and make them kind of do pairs, because that's why Legends of Tomorrow works so well, because every single episode there's a different pair that then is focused on, and then each person gets relatively the same amount of screen time and the same amount of development, and they each get to talk, and it's great. And that's what this episode of Supergirl really capitalized on and really did. They did it really well. And I think now they're leaning into the fact that they're embracing the fact that they're an ensemble show. even though they've been an ensemble show for quite a number of years, they're finally kind of embracing that. And this episode really showed that embrace. And I don't know, it had some of the best acting in a long time, just like really, really, really solid character moments, solid moments of actors just acting their asses off. It was so good. Oh my God, it was so good. So to pick up right where we left off at the end of the last episode, this episode, though, was called 603 Phantom Menaces. Really, really fun joke. Really fun joke about Star Wars, about a not so good Star Wars movie. Anyway, so we pick up right where the last episode ended with John and Magan, and they find Silas in his apartment, and his apartment's freezing. He's got frost all over him. He's got blood all over him. And they realize, and he expresses to them that a phantom was hidden inside of his body, and it escaped, and now they gotta go find him, basically. Also, Kara and her dad, back in the Phantom Zone, they catch a ride with a phantom. It was their plan that they established, again, right at the end of the last episode. But they get ambushed and thrown out of the portal, and Kara broke her leg on the impact, and she couldn't save her dad because he gets taken by these, basically, Phantom Zone space pirates. So he was taken by them, but this woman shows up and helps Kara by fooling the space pirates and taking her to the cave that she normally lives in. And this woman is so cute, such a fun character. We find out that her name is Nixley. We don't find out in this moment, but that is her name. She is... Well, I guess we'll talk about that later. But Nixley is as far as I'm going with the name. I can't pronounce her full name. I won't be trying it. Mixixmidalik is as far as it goes. In terms of me pronouncing imp names. I can't do it. So back in National City, in the tower, Brainy is thinking about Kara in the Phantom Zone, and he's really beating himself up about this. He is really upset that he could not get Kara out last episode, and he is thinking about her fate, about her in the Phantom Zone where it's cold and it's lonely and it's terrible and it's dark and it's awful. And then he sees Lex on TV. So Catco is running an interview with him. So much for holding him accountable for his actions. Thank you, Andrea Rojas. Oh my God. Ugh. I mean, honestly, I think that really it was just like a commentary about how media, I guess, they all hated Trump and but the thing is that they talked about him all the time, and they gave him opportunity and platform and everything. I mean, obviously he was the president of the United States, so he had a platform, but they capitalized on the circus that he was in order to gain views and whatever. Like, that was a thing. Like, when he lost, I think a lot of people in media were like, well, shit, what the hell are we gonna do? Because this guy's not gonna do a bunch of crazy shit that's gonna make people watch the news 24/7. What are we gonna do? And we see that in some of the, reporting that has come out of this, Biden presidency so far. Lots of coverage about his dog. It's things like that. It's trying to fill up the 24-hour news cycle when we have a president that doesn't tweet at 2 a.m., things like that. And I think that this is kind of a commentary about that, using Lex and using Catco, kind of capitalizing on him. Just a commentary about media and the 24-hour media cycle. But anyway, so he lashes out. Brainy does. He totally lashes out, and he's literally about to pull the TV off of the wall, which he needs to be careful about that, because by the end of this episode, every super friend is unemployed except for Nia. And Kara, technically, but, the longer she stays in the Phantom Zone, the longer that, I don't know how much longer she'll be employed. Anyway, though, but then the Martians barge into the tower. They have Silas, and they're like, we need to help this man. And Silas says that he has 3 roommates, so they need to find him. And Jean needs to call Alex. And basically, his mindset at this point is, march on. I am a soldier, no emotions. Alex needs to get her ass here. I don't care if she's sad, kind of thing. And so Alex at her apartment is in fact very sad. She is very sad. She is watching Kara's crystal messages, and it's the return of the clip-on bang, which is really unfortunate. Instead of this episode, it was called Phantom Menaces, but it could have also been called Return of the Clip-on Bang, like Return of the Jedi. Anyway, so Kara says, without her, I wouldn't be the hero or the person that I am today. And Alex she is going through it. And Kelly comes in, she comforts Alex, and she says, Alex is like, look, Kara's fate right now is worse than death. I feel so guilty because I couldn't save her. And Alex is basically saying, like, what is the point of living anymore in a world where Kara doesn't exist? Like, what is the point of waking up in the morning if I don't have my sister? And it's very like scary talk from Alex to hear that. And you could see the fear in Kelly as well. And I thought that was a really great moment from Azie and Chyler both, who really like shouldered that really heavy scene and kind of hinted at the real heavy implications of it without, being, I think, explicit as maybe they could have been. And Kelly promises to be with her always and to support her. And she's like, look, Kara needs you to have hope, and that's what she does. She inspires hope, and you need to be hopeful because we can get her back. So then at Luthor Corp, Lex is in Lena's office, and he reveals that Lena has locked Lex out of everything. She even changed his bioscan with Brainy's help. But Lex threatens Lena to let him back in to everything and to like basically reinstate him as like head of the company, with a charge from his new DA friend if he doesn't get everything back in like an hour, and that her cyber attack is not undone. And he basically says, like, I told him that he needs to pay really close attention to what you did with Nano Cherry that you literally admitted to on the stand. And so you should watch your back. That's kind of what Lex's threats were. And I mean, he also had some kind of like court order to make Lena undo that cyber attack. So she is forced to do that, which just sucks because it was another moment where it was like Lena finally got another kind of checkmate on Lex, and then he immediately had a way to undermine her and embarrass her and undo whatever she had done. And that's what's so frustrating about Lex. But I don't have a super huge problem with that because of how the episode ended, but I'll get to that. So apparently phantoms, and Brainy had like a scientific name for them, but I don't have the name. I forgot it. But apparently phantoms are like super duper good at multiplying. They attack their prey basically with misery, and their venom then turns the people they attack into phantoms. And so the person that gets attacked, their like life force, or like basically their soul, kind of like comes out of their mouth and it goes into the phantom's nest, which gives them even more power. And right in front of their eyes, Silas transforms into a phantom, like right there in the tower. And when he looks at Alex gets all these flashes of Kara and of their time together, but also of her in the Phantom Zone, or like being sucked away into the Phantom Zone. And so it's all that misery related to Kara. And while he's doing that, Brainy ultimately restrains him, and they lock him in a little glass prison cell that they just have in the middle of the tower. And it was like, it gave me like OG DEO cave vibes from the cells. Like if you remember like season 1, the prison cells that they had in the cave, that's the DEO cave, I mean, that's very much what these prison cells in the tower are reminiscent of. But anyway, so now that Silas is turned, they need to locate his roommates because they're running around and they're probably most likely also phantoms at this point. And they're going to go out and multiply and multiply and multiply. So they need to put a handle on this right now. But before they actually go and do any of that, Alex and Jean have a discussion that reminded me so much of season 1. So many of their talks this episode were very reminiscent of the relationship between Alex and Hank, quote unquote Hank. And I really loved that. I loved that they were able to kind of tap back into that relationship and because I mean the idea of like, you need to be a soldier, you can't have feelings, is very much a theme that they explored between Alex and Jean, both in season 1 and then in the later seasons. I just thought it was really cool that they were able to kind of like bring that conversation back, but give it a new life and a new meaning. And Jean basically tells Alex that they have to act like soldiers, and Alex, she can't believe what she's hearing because she's like, how can you just turn off your feelings for Kara? This is Kara we're talking about. And she can't just march on like nothing is happening, So speaking of Kara, back in the Phantom Zone, Nixley describes Kara's father's potentially horrible fate because they're about to feed him. They're about to sacrifice him to some kind of monster in a lake. But I guess the thing is that apparently this monster has to circle the lake 11 times before it can eat anything. I don't know the whole logistics of this monster that they ultimately prevent Zor-El from being eaten by, but Kara is obviously, there's a sense of urgency from Kara that is not there from Nixley, because she's like, well, we have time, he's got to circle the lake 11 times, and Kara's like, we got to go right now, but her leg is broken and she tries to push through the pain, but she's just too hurt. And for me, this episode kind of, at least in her dynamic with Nixley and with her broken leg as well, being kind of hopeless, I thought that this episode was very reminiscent of Human for a Day. It had those vibes for Kara from me, and I really liked that. I thought that was really cool. Just because, it goes to show, once again, the power that Kara has, not within her superpowers, but within her voice and her personality and the hope that she inspires and the belief that she has in people around her, in the goodness of people around her. And I think that's obviously one of Kara's best moments, like one of her, not best moments, but one of her best attributes is that ability to be hopeful despite everything and to believe in people despite all odds. It was another moment highlighting that for me, and I really enjoyed that. So Kara tells Nixley her tragic backstory, very much like the OG introduction, where she's like, when I was a child, my planet was dying and my pod got knocked off course and all of that. So she gave her the whole rundown, and but she does say to Nixley, I can't lose him again. And I think, kind of confirming what everybody was thinking with Kara kind of ignoring her dad's sins in order to protect herself, because Kara at this point is so fragile because she's lost so many people in her life. How can a person can only suffer so much, and I think that this episode kind of proved that with both Kara and Jean. So Nixley actually pulls out this little crystal ball, and she shows the crystal ball to Kara, and it's got Kara's dad in it. She's like, look, it's like a little security camera. We can watch him and make sure he's not dead. And he wasn't dead, so that was good. Gave him enough peace of mind to go to sleep for the night. But it made me think of there's an audio from TikTok going around right now, and it's from Labyrinth. It's a David Bowie quote where it's a crystal. nothing more. And that's what it felt like in that moment. Anyway, so Kara actually brings up Mixie to Nixley, and she knows him. She knows Mixie, and Kara kind of begins to trust Nixley and lets her make her a splint. And it was really sweet, the connection that they shared, because we find out that Nixley is a fifth dimensional imp. And Kara's like, hey, I know one of those, Mr. Mixie. And she's like, oh my god, Mixie, he's crazy. So back on Earth, M'gann ends up posing to J'onn that the phantoms can be multiplying like right this moment. And she questions J'onn's decision to wait around for Brainy's protective technology. She's like, listen, we can go and get them right now, because what they're doing right now is they're making more. And if we wait, we'll have to fight more of them in the end. And I definitely agree with M'gann's logic on this one, because like, if they can multiply super fast, why would you not want to go after them right away? I get protecting yourself, but for me, it would be a hard decision to make to just like sit around and do nothing, which is obviously something that M'gann has a big issue with, because she ends up going to find some phantoms. She's not waiting. She ignores J'onn's order and goes. And J'onn, Alex, and Brainy get like a hit because someone said there was some ghosts attacking a warehouse, and they show up at the disturbance and they find M'gann with phantom slashes in her neck. Oh my god. And in that moment, I was so stressed. I was like, guys, if we lose M'gann, I'm gonna lose my mind. I will lose it. I will never forgive the Supergirl writers if we lose M'gann in this moment. And so while that's all kind of happening, Brainy pops into Lena's office and she says, you're hologram multitasking again, which I just adore because it implies that they're literally besties. And they have a plan against Lex called Operation Vengeance, and they're both responsible for all the shit that Lex is so mad about, and now they're actually funneling his illegal money to a children's hospital, to the Luthor wing of a children's hospital. And I love the relationship between the two of them, and they have a scene later that's just wonderful. But I liked the confirmation that Lena has in fact been keeping up with the Superfriends, specifically through Brainy. So I assume that he's the one telling Lena, you know, we're not any closer to finding Kara, sorry. You know, but I love that. So anyway, back at the tower though, while that was kind of happening, M'gann is crashing faster than Silas, and they actually decide to do a transfusion with J'onn's Martian blood with M'gann's Martian blood, which, I mean, they're not the same species of Martian, but maybe all Martians have the same blood, I don't know. Anyway, but they decide to do this transfusion to kind of slow down her transformation, and it does work. It starts to slow down her transformation for sure. And M'gann apologizes, but J'onn kind of is like, no, you don't need to apologize because I messed up too. Treating this whole thing like I'm a soldier is just not working. I like how he's kind of gone back and forth like with his attitude, and I think that's a really cool character thing because he genuinely doesn't know how to go forward. Because when he lost his daughters, he wasn't able to do anything, and now that he's lost Kara, he has an opportunity to do something, but I think the amount of pressure just kind of leaves him spiraling, and I think that's really cool, and I love them as a couple. So then in the Phantom Zone, we actually get Nixley's backstory. Turns out she was a princess to a mad king, and he believed that she was this like threat to his rule, and he actually sent her to the Phantom Zone after killing her older brother, who she says was like as good as people get, just like a, you know, really good person, and he killed him. And he placed this weird bracelet on her wrist that actually sapped her powers, and it was a constant reminder of how silly he made her feel and stuff like that. And And that is kind of a theme that is carried over into Lena's story for this episode, but I'll talk about that later. And she makes Kara this cute little crutch, and Kara has a full human for a day moment, like it's, just like I said earlier, where she says, just because neither of us have our powers doesn't mean we can't believe in ourselves and each other. So then Lena is summoned to the tower to help Brainy with some extra power to help keep the phantoms contained, because while they got Magan, they also got some other phantom people to put in cages. And so while they're there, it's revealed that Lex set fire to the children's wing of the hospital to get back at Lena for donating his fronted money. Genuinely horrible. And I hate that he was able to somehow place the blame on Lena, because it doesn't make sense. Like, they were like, oh, it was faulty wiring, and Lena was responsible for inspections. Like, she's not in there, on her hands and knees inspecting the wiring. Like, how is she to be blamed for this? But I get it. It's just because they just needed Lex to do something super, 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 super evil. And it was frustrating. But anyway, so in the Phantom Zone, Nixley uses her magic crystal to smash the chain bracelet off, and it fully breaks the crystal, but no need to worry about that, because now she has magic. She fixes Kara's leg, and now they're all super duper good to go save Zor-El. And she says, all I could think about was your encouragement. I had to rid myself of my father's shackles, both metaphorical and physical. And I think that is a really important quote when talking about Lena and her giving up her company at the end of this episode. So also, Nixley ends up confirming that you remember last episode where I was like, yeah, that scene where she talks about Rain's lair and how everybody she ever loved was there. That was totally wrong, and it didn't make sense. The continuity didn't work. Anyway, remember how I kind of skipped over it last episode just because I didn't want to talk about their continuity errors, but apparently it wasn't a continuity error. She says that the fractured Phantom Zone, like the fracturing of the Phantom Zone, makes their memories wrong. Like, she has been having wrong memories for the whole time that she was in the Phantom Zone, and Kara's like, yeah, me too. And so, okay, that makes sense. We were supposed to question, oh my god, that's not right. Not everybody Kara ever loved was there, but yeah, it was supposed to not be right. So kudos to Supergirl writers for doing something right for once. But it's like they were from another Earth or another life, obviously, because with all the Earths converged in crisis, it messed things up. So then we have the Lena and Brainy scene. Genuinely one of the best scenes probably in the entire series. Like, genuinely. Like, Katie and Jesse brought literally everything to this scene, and it was so good. It was phenomenal. It was so good. And oh my god, like, it was so good. And I'm so appreciative of the work that they put in for that scene, because it was so powerful. It just was so good. It was so good. So Lena says, obviously they're reeling from the news of the fire at the children's hospital, and Lena says that she wishes they could kill Lex. And then Brainy suggests a million ways that they could. He's got the plan. He's like, I know exactly how we should kill him. I know where we should cut up the body and put all the parts so that he'll never come back ever again. And while Brainy's talking about this, Lena looks kind of horrified. I mean, because she is seeing, the effect of her brother's abuse on another person. And Lena kind of says that they can't kill Lex, and it turned her into the worst version of herself the last time that she did it, because Brainy's like, you literally did it, like, you killed him already, like, why can't we just do it again? And Lena's like, it turned me into something that I didn't like and that I didn't want to be, and we need to figure out a way to beat him without turning into him, basically. And Brainy ends up fully lashing out, smashing tech, just like the culmination of all of his pent-up anger and emotion. And Lena just looks devastated as she watches, and she says that little boxes aren't helpful, that's not how this works. You can't just put all your emotions into little boxes and forget about them. You have to feel your emotions, let it happen, let it out, and then let it go. And I thought that was a really beautiful character development moment for the two of them, because Lena was the one who introduced Brainy to little boxes in the first place in season 3. And I just really, 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 really loved this moment for them, because it showed so much growth. And it especially for Lena, and I mean Brainy as well, for the journeys that they took in the last season. I thought it really was a good payoff to have them come to this emotional peak together, and to have them both kind of come to understand their emotions, especially after everything they went through in the last season. And so they need to work through this anger together so they can move forward stronger and whole. And Brainy says, "I miss her." And it was so devastating. And Lena, who was tearful but holding it together, if you watch that scene where he says, "I miss her," you can see this giant tear just fall off of Katie's face. As she's out of focus, in the foreground, just this huge tear falls off of her face. So devastating. And she looks him in the eye, grabs his hands, and she says, "Me too." And it was oh my God. And it was such a cool moment too, because obviously they were talking about Lex, but then obviously the frustration and the sorrow and the grief of Kara being gone snuck in. And it was one of those moments where you're talking about one thing, but you're also talking about another thing, a deeper, more meaningful thing. And I loved the just that moment. And I think something that I believe about Lena and her experience with Kara being gone is that she isn't really allowing herself to grieve Kara, because she feels that she doesn't deserve to grieve Kara. That's what I believe, because I think as she's looking, especially when after Kara left or got bamfed to the Phantom Zone, she's looking at the grief of Alex. She's looking at the grief of Brainy. She's looking at the grief of people who spent the last year protecting Kara. And for her, she's I spent the last year hurting Kara. Why do I deserve to grieve and to feel bad for Kara being gone when I was, imagining punching her into oblivion about a year ago? I think that's genuinely how Lena feels, and how that affected her, and how she is feeling affected by Kara. And I think for her to even say "me too" was such a powerful moment for her, because she finally let herself feel those feelings for how she feels about Kara in a public space, you know what I mean? And not be focused on something else. Because like I said, I think that she was kind of bottling up those emotions and putting them away before, to focus on Lex and just to focus on what needs to happen. And now she is finally kind of fully gonna allow herself to feel those feelings for Kara. So Jean and Alex have another talk, and they talk about how Magan is going to inevitably be lost. Jean says that his bottling up emotions cost him everything, and Magan, and that Alex was right in needing to feel and not just push on. And Alex says that she couldn't get out of bed this morning because she didn't want to live in a world without Kara, and she says that Jean has to fight the way that Alex is fighting right now. And Alex then suggests to Jean that he release his piece of Magan's soul to transfer into her to stop the transformation. And Jean actually hesitates in this moment, because he's I don't want to lose this little piece of her soul that I own. I don't want to lose that, because that's the only thing I have left of her. And Alex is well, okay, but would you rather live with the real Magan or live with a piece of Magan, with a a fragment of Magan, and she says that living with fragments, there's no comparison. It pales in comparison to living with the real thing. And that was obviously also her kind of ruminating on the holograms that she apparently was just watching on repeat, and trying to she was just wallowing in self-pity or, grief about Kara. But she wasn't doing anything to get Kara back. She was just watching what little she has left of Kara. But she's like, you know what? We both need to stop trying to hold on to the ghosts that we have of the people we love and try to get them back. And so Kelly ends up showing up at the tower, and she brought some obsidian tech to help with Magan's soul transfusion. And in this moment, Brainy makes a nerdy Star Trek reference, and he actually looks to Lena like she would understand, but she has no idea, and that was so funny. But then the Phantoms attack, and Brainy, Lena, and Alex become a dream team against them with a cool suit-up moment, such a fun fight scene. And Kelly is with Jean and Magan as they do the ritual, and Kelly gets attacked but is saved by Jean, who is apparently like super duper good at multitasking, because at the same time that he's giving up Magan's part of his part of Magan's soul, he's also like like getting some phantoms away from Kelly. And Lena sends them in a portal, and all the phantoms disappear into the prison cells except the prime one, who apparently is the only one that's capable of using its own portals to like bamf in and out of places. So Magan is saved, and she doesn't transform, which is really cool. So back at Luthor Corp, Lena confronts Lex about his hospital stunt, and he asks if she's gonna shoot him, and she says, no, but I did really consider it, but I also remembered that it didn't really change anything the last time, so no point in that, huh? And Lena says that she's leaving Luthor Corp for good, that she worked out a deal with the DA to drop the charges if she walks out. Lena says she can finally be free and happy, and that she's done playing Lex's games. She says, because Lex is like, you can't just walk out of here. You hate me too much to let this go. And Lena says, I do hate you. I just love me more. I loved this moment for Lena. I know that people online have had some real damn mixed opinions about Lena giving up the company. But I think that, honestly, it was the only way for this storyline to end. You know what I mean? Like, in season 2, she came in to National City in order to take over the company, her family's company, and make it a force for good. She had the intention of rehabilitating her family's name. That genuinely, that was the intention, to do good while simultaneously making up for the sins of her family, And for me, I think that something ultimately had to give, and that was Lena. She had to give, because Luthor Corp and even L Corp, when it was L Corp, when it was her company, it was always a cross to bear. It was always a cross to bear. She always got people tried to assassinate her over it all the time. And, as long as she was at Luthor Corp, as long as she was at L Corp, people were always going to look at her as the Luthor, and she always wanted to make a name for herself outside of her family. And I think the only way for her to do that is to leave the company that is causing her all of this pain and turmoil. It's wonderful that she had a chance to rehabilitate her company and her family's name, but I just didn't see it as something that was sustainable for Lena. It's exactly like Nixley said in this episode, where she had to free herself from the chains. Lena had to do the same thing. She had to metaphorically and physically free herself from Lex and Lillian and Lionel's chains, the Luthor chains. She had to free herself from them in order to grow as a person and to do the good that she believes that she can do, to change and to finally make a difference in this world. I just think that she had to let go of carrying that cross on her back, And for me, I just think that was one of the most satisfying character development moments that we've probably ever had on Supergirl for me. It was wonderful. It was such a good moment. So back at the tower, Jean and Magan, they talk, and he says, he apologizes again, and Magan says, you know what, I knew that I trusted my soul to the right person. And she says, the only reason that I was even here is because a piece of my soul lives in your heart, Jean Jones. And I think she kind of implied that even without the physical piece of Magan's soul actually residing in Jean, a piece of her is still within him. And I love them, and they're such a good couple, and they hug. I love them. Such good hets. So Alex actually sees this hug, she sees this interaction, and she looks at them, and she comes home to Kelly, who's nursing her wounds because she got frozen on the hands, and from the fight with the Phantoms, and Alex brings her flowers. And Alex says she thanks her for being her rock. Today, she says, Kelly replies though, and she says, I couldn't save anyone today. She felt like a failure. But Alex says, that's not true. You saved me. Kelly inspired Alex and inspired hope within her, and it inspired her to save Magan and to keep going. And she blurts out, just move in with me. And it was such a sweet moment. And she says she wants to wake up in the morning and tell her how much she loves her every single morning as long as I can. And I love that because Alex, is learning to just like not have such tunnel vision, but to appreciate everything that's around her. And she's like, I just want Kelly around me always. I want her to wake up with me in the morning. And I absolutely adored that. And Kelly, is crying, and it's such a wonderful moment for Azie and Chyler. Again, such strong performances from the two of them this episode. And she says, Alex Danvers, yes, very much, almost a proposal. I hope that we do see that from the two of them. I think we will. I think we'll eventually later in the season see a proposal from Alex. Or from Kelly, I don't know, maybe whoever wants to propose. I think maybe it's actually Kelly's turn to ask Alex a life-altering question. I would love to see it. Lex ultimately got royally screwed this episode. Love to see it. And that's why I didn't have such a huge issue with him kind of getting a checkmate on Lena at the beginning of the episode, because by the end, it paid off for Lena. It was a payoff, for character-wise, it was a payoff. We had Lex get this like win over Lena and humiliate her again, have that kind of thing. But by the end, Lex was the one humiliated and left to kind of flounder. And I love that. So Kara, at the end of the episode, Kara and Nixley, they show up, they save Kara's dad. Wasn't actually a big deal. She kind of like bamps him in and do all of that with her newfound magic. And Kara was, one thing that kind of confused me is Kara was able to just like break the chains on the cage, and I wonder if like maybe Nixley's magic kind of restored a bit of her powers, because I mean, a normal person would not be able to just like shatter chains, but maybe I'm like totally reading that scene wrong, but I just was like, oh my god, she was able to like fully break those chains. Maybe a bit of Nixley's magic kind of restored a little bit of her powers. I don't know. I'm excited, though, to see if that is the case, because there's so many things that Kara can do then. It gives her an advantage in the Phantom Zone. And Kara says that they need to keep looking for a way out. And she says that her mother built an exit somewhere in the Phantom Zone. We just have to find it. And she says, hey, Nixley, do you want to come with me and my dad on a little road trip to find the exit? And Nixley's like, yeah, hell yeah. Oh, my God. And they could all escape the Phantom Zone together. And that was the end of the episode. It was a really, really, really goddamn good episode. Like I said, such a good week for DCTV. Such really stellar episodes from both Batwoman and Supergirl this week. Really, I love them. I loved it. Loved it. So excited to see each of the coming episodes. Batwoman 211 is going to air on Sunday. It'll be tomorrow by the time you're listening to this. So please check it out. Please check out Batwoman if you have not and you're watching Supergirl. It's so worth it. It's very, very gay. It's a wonderful show, genuinely. And obviously Supergirl is going to air another episode on Tuesday, and then I will... let me know what you think, though, about what you thought about these 2 episodes. You could let me know what you thought about Batwoman. Let me know what you thought about Supergirl. You could tweet me at televisedpod and let me know. You could leave a comment in the comments below. Don't forget to rate, like, share, subscribe, do all of the things. And yeah, I will see you guys next Saturday. Bye.